November 22nd, 2022, Chattanooga, Tennessee. A cold Tuesday night settling over the city. 22-year-old Jasmine Pace climbs into her white Chevrolet Equinox and drives toward an apartment building on Tremont Street. She's going to see someone she trusts, someone she's been talking to for months after meeting on a dating app. She has no idea she has less than 3 hours left to live. Security cameras capture her SUV pulling into the apartment complex parking lot just before midnight. The timestamp reads 11:47 p.m. Jasmine parks, grabs her overnight bag from the passenger seat, and walks toward the entrance. She's wearing casual clothes, comfortable for a quiet evening. Her phone is in her hand. She's smiling. Everything about her body language says she feels safe. Inside apartment 210, Jason Chen is waiting. 22 years old, computer science major at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, clean record, charming smile, the kind of guy who blends into any crowd, unremarkable in every way except one. He's already made his decision about what's going to happen tonight. But this story doesn't start here. It starts with understanding who Jasmine Pace really was, because that matters. It matters more than anything. Jasmine wasn't just another college student trying to figure out her future. She was the heartbeat of her family, the person everyone turned to when life got complicated. Her older sister Gabby would later describe Jasmine as having a gift for making people feel seen, for making them believe everything would work out, even when it felt impossible. At community college in Chattanooga, Jasmine juggled classes with dreams that included children of her own someday. Those who knew her best called her Jazzy. The nickname fit perfectly. She moved through life with energy and warmth, fiercely protective of the people she loved. Her two nieces adored their aunt. Her godson, little Quan, lit up whenever she walked into a room. Jasmine had a way with kids that made everyone certain she'd be an incredible mother someday. She practiced on her nieces and Quan, showering them with the fierce protective love that defined who she was. She collected rescue cats, 4 of them, each one saved from a bad situation and given a home where they were cherished. Friends joked that Jasmine couldn't pass an animal shelter without stopping to see if anyone needed her. She had that kind of heart. But November 2022 had been brutal for her family. Jasmine's grandmother lost her battle with cancer. Grief settled over the young woman like a heavy coat she couldn't shake off. Those closest to her understood that she sometimes needed space to process emotions. Moments when she'd pull back from family gatherings to work through sadness alone. Nobody questioned it when Jasmine occasionally went quiet for a day or two. That was just how she dealt with loss. She'd retreat, process, and come back when she was ready. That pattern of grief would become the perfect cover for something far more sinister. Katrina Pace expected her daughter home for Thanksgiving dinner. The family gathering was planned for Thursday, November 24th. Food prepared, family invited, everything ready. Jasmine had confirmed she'd be there. She wouldn't miss Thanksgiving. She never missed Thanksgiving. Then came the text message on Thursday morning. Short, simple, unexpected. Jasmine had decided to spend the week with her friend Emma instead. She needed time away from family. She was still processing the loss of her grandmother. She hoped they'd understand. Given the recent death in the family, Katrina swallowed her disappointment and tried to be understanding. Her daughter was hurting. If she needed space, Katrina would give it to her. But something felt off about the message. Something in the wording didn't sound quite like Jasmine. Then came the Facebook post that made Katrina's stomach drop. "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby," it read, accompanied by a photo of Jasmine in revealing clothing. Katrina stared at the image on her phone screen. Her daughter never posted photos like that. Jasmine was private, modest, careful about her online presence. This wasn't like her at all. Travis Pace, Jasmine's father, saw the photo and immediately knew something was wrong. The tattoos were missing. Jasmine's distinctive ink covered her right arm, a timeline of her life marked in permanent art. She'd gotten each tattoo months apart, carefully planning each edition. They were impossible to miss. Elaborate designs that meant something to her, that told her story. In this photo, her skin was blank where those designs should have been. This wasn't a recent photo. This was someone using an old image from before Jasmine had started getting tattooed. This was someone pretending to be Jasmine. Katrina called Emma immediately. The conversation was short and devastating. Jasmine wasn't there, had never planned to be there. Emma hadn't heard from Jasmine in days. She had no idea what the texts were talking about. Katrina's hands shook as she checked her messages again. Multiple texts from Jasmine's number, all saying essentially the same thing. She needed space. She needed time. She needed everyone to back off and let her grieve in peace. Stop calling. Stop texting. Just leave her alone for a while. But nobody had actually spoken to Jasmine. Not her voice, not a phone call. Just texts that were starting to feel increasingly wrong. Katrina called other family members, friends, anyone who might have heard from Jasmine recently. The pattern repeated. Text messages from Jasmine's number asking for space, asking to be left alone, but no actual contact, no phone calls, no voice, nothing that proved Jasmine was actually the one sending these messages. The family didn't wait for permission. They started searching immediately, driven by a mother's instinct that something terrible had happened. Katrina accessed the My Chevy app on her phone. The GPS tracking system installed in Jasmine's white Chevrolet Equinox showed exactly where the vehicle was located, a parking lot at Signal View Condominiums on Mountain Creek Road. Jasmine didn't know anyone who lived there. She'd never mentioned the location before. By the time Katrina and Travis reached the SUV, darkness had fallen on November 26th, Saturday evening. 4 days had passed since anyone had actually seen or spoken to Jasmine. The driver's seat had been pushed far back, adjusted for someone much taller than Jasmine's petite 5'2" frame. Inside, they found her belongings scattered across the seats and floor. Her makeup bag, some clothes, personal items that Jasmine would never have left behind if she'd driven the car herself. The evidence was clear. Whoever had driven this car last, it wasn't Jasmine. Katrina called 911 from the parking lot, her voice shaking as she explained to the dispatcher that her daughter was missing, that her car had been abandoned, that something was clearly wrong. Chattanooga police arrived within 20 minutes. What happened next would haunt the investigation and nearly cost Jasmine any chance at justice. The responding officers took a report. They wrote down information about Jasmine, her description when she was last seen, the details about the text messages and the car. They took notes about the driver's seat being adjusted wrong, about the belongings scattered inside. They exchanged contact information with the frustrated parents. Then they left. The explanation they gave was simple. Jasmine was an adult. Adults have the right to disappear if they want to. There were no clear signs of foul play. The car wasn't reported stolen. Jasmine had sent text messages saying she wanted to be alone. Until there was evidence of a crime, there wasn't much police could do. Katrina and Travis stood in that parking lot, abandoned by the very system designed to protect their daughter. But Katrina refused to give up. She contacted their cell phone provider. Jasmine was on the family plan, which granted Katrina access to the phone records. What she found there was crucial. No calls had been placed from Jasmine's phone in days. Every text message, every Facebook post, every attempt to make people believe she was fine, they'd all happened while her phone sat silent. No voice calls, no outgoing calls, just texts. Someone had Jasmine's phone and was using it to send messages, but they weren't actually calling anyone because a voice would give them away. Katrina scrolled through the call log with growing horror. Then she found something. One number appeared repeatedly in the records. On the night of November 22nd, Jasmine had connected with this number for over 71 minutes, more than an hour of conversation. That was the last actual phone call made from Jasmine's device. Katrina called the number with police present, hoping for answers that might lead them to her daughter. A young man answered. His voice was calm, casual, like he'd been expecting a normal phone call. Hello? Hi, my name is Katrina Pace. I'm looking for my daughter, Jasmine. Have you heard from her? Do you know where she is? There was a pause, just a beat too long. Then the answer came quickly, too quickly. I'm Jason Chen. I know Jasmine. We met on Bumble a few months ago, but I haven't talked to her in days. Last time we spoke, it was only for a few minutes. Katrina was holding the phone records in her hand. 71 minutes. Over an hour of conversation on the night Jasmine disappeared. Nobody forgets talking to someone for over an hour. That's not a conversation you mistake for a few minutes. Are you sure? Katrina pressed. The phone records show you talked for over an hour on Tuesday night. No, that's not right. It was just a quick call. Maybe the records are wrong. The officers present heard the lie. They heard Katrina explain the phone records, the timestamp, the length of the call. They heard a mother begging them to investigate this young man who was clearly hiding something. The police response was the same as before. They did nothing. They explained that the phone records could be interpreted different ways, that Jason Chen wasn't obligated to talk to them without a lawyer, that without evidence of a crime, they couldn't force him to answer questions. They suggested Katrina keep trying to reach her daughter, keep checking with friends, see if anything else turned up. Then they left Katrina and Travis standing there, knowing that the one person who might know where Jasmine was had just lied directly to them, and nobody was doing anything about it. Katrina and Travis were on their own. The desperate parents returned to searching through records, through messages, through anything they might have missed. Travis drove to places Jasmine frequented, showing her photo, asking if anyone had seen her. Katrina worked the phones, calling everyone in Jasmine's contact list, trying to find someone who knew something. Then Katrina found it, a text message she hadn't noticed before. sent from Jasmine's phone in the early hours of November 23rd. No words, no explanation. Just a dropped location pin. 110 Tremont Street, an apartment building. The message had been sent at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning. Jasmine had never sent a message like this before. She'd never dropped a random location pin, especially not in the middle of the night with no context. But here it was, time-stamped and undeniable. Possibly the last thing Jasmine had tried to tell them before something terrible happened. The next day, Sunday, November 27th, Katrina and Travis went to that address. They knocked on every door in the building, desperate for information about their daughter. Most residents answered. Most had never seen Jasmine, but apartment 210 remained silent. Nobody home, nobody answering. Then neighbors started sharing what they'd heard. A loud disturbance had erupted from apartment 210 around 2 in the morning on November 23rd. The timing matched Jasmine's dropped location pin exactly. Screaming, running, the sound of a door slamming, chaos in the middle of the night that had woken up half the building. One neighbor, Courtney Brewer, lived in the apartment directly below 210. She'd been startled awake by a female voice, distressed, emphatic, not quite angry, but definitely upset. Then footsteps, multiple people running toward the front door, the sound of impact, more noise. Somehow, and accounts vary on exactly how Katrina and Travis made their way inside apartment 210. A notebook by the door revealed the occupant's name, Jason Chen, the same Jason Chen who claimed he hadn't really talked to Jasmine, the same Jason Chen who lied about 71 minutes of phone conversation. The apartment was small, open concept with the kitchen flowing directly into the living room. A hallway led to the single bedroom and bathroom. Most of the space was visible immediately upon entering. On the kitchen counter sat a small travel bag, Jasmine's bag, the same one she'd been carrying when security cameras captured her arriving at the building. Travis searched through a drawer and found his daughter's driver's license and credit cards. He pulled them out deliberately, leaving them in plain view on the counter. Evidence that Jasmine had been here. Proof that Jason Chen had lied. Cleaning supplies covered multiple surfaces throughout the apartment. Bottles of peroxide, paper towels, bleach. Someone had been working very hard to scrub something away. The living room showed signs of furniture being moved recently. Drag marks on the carpet, indentations where heavy items had sat for months before being repositioned. The arrangement looked wrong, deliberate, like someone was trying to hide something underneath. Chattanooga police were called again. Officers arrived, spoke with neighbors about the disturbance they'd heard, took statements, documented what Katrina and Travis had found inside the apartment, and then they left. Still no search warrant, still no real investigation. Katrina watched them drive away, fury and desperation mixing into something that would drive her actions over the next several hours. Her daughter was missing. Her daughter's belongings were in this apartment. The occupant had lied about his contact with her. Neighbors had heard a violent disturbance at the exact time Jasmine sent that location pin, and police were doing nothing. She went back into that apartment. Not once, not twice. Multiple times over the next several hours, Katrina Pace entered Jason Chen's residence and removed items. Notebooks with handwriting she didn't recognize. Electronics that might contain messages or photos. Cell phones. A camera. An iPad. Anything that might tell her where her daughter was or what had happened to her. She wasn't waiting for police permission anymore. She was doing their job for them. Travis searched outside the building while Katrina gathered evidence inside. They worked through the evening, two parents trying to save their daughter while law enforcement sat on their hands and did nothing. Close to midnight on Sunday, November 27th, the Chattanooga Police Department finally returned to apartment 210. This time, they had a search warrant. What they found transformed a missing person case into a homicide investigation. Investigators noticed it immediately when they entered apartment 210 with proper authorization. Stains on the hardwood floor in the living room. More in the bathroom grout. Dark discoloration that someone had tried desperately to scrub away. The carpet in the bedroom showed suspicious marks. Spatter on the doors and bathroom walls. Tiny droplets that had been missed during the frantic cleaning. The abundance of cleaning supplies suddenly made terrible sense. Outside the building, police recovered 2 white sneakers that had been concealed among refuse bins. Blue trousers were found nearby, also hidden. Both items showed signs of having been worn recently, then hastily discarded. Inside the apartment, fragments of broken glass littered areas of the living room floor, some pieces ground into the carpet. Furniture had clearly been moved around. The drag marks Katrina had noticed were even more obvious now that investigators knew what they were looking for. Heavy items had been repositioned to cover something underneath. In the bedroom, investigators found distinct marks showing where furniture had sat for a long time before being moved within the past few days. The rearrangement seemed designed to hide a large stain beneath where the bed now sat. On top of the bed sat a kitchen knife, just lying there, waiting to be found. The crime scene unit arrived with luminol and Blue Star, forensic agents that reveal biological evidence that's been cleaned up or is invisible to the naked eye. When they turned off the lights and activated the chemicals, the apartment lit up like a Christmas tree. The hallway glowed, massive luminol reactions everywhere. The bathroom walls showed handprint patterns in the chemical glow, like someone had braced themselves against the surface. The living room revealed spatter patterns that had been wiped down but not eliminated. Biological evidence was everywhere. The case of Jasmine Pace's disappearance officially became a homicide investigation. But where was her body? Detectives pulled security camera footage from the apartment building and every surrounding business that had cameras. The timeline they pieced together revealed Jason Chen's movements over a critical 48-hour period, and they hoped it would show them where he'd taken Jasmine. Her white Chevrolet Equinox was captured on camera, turning into the apartment parking lot at 11:47 p.m. on November 22nd. Security footage showed Jasmine getting out, grabbing her bag, walking toward the entrance. She looked normal, relaxed, completely unaware of what was about to happen. Hours later, just after 3 in the morning on November 23rd, the same vehicle left the complex. But this time, a figure in a light-colored hoodie was driving. Not Jasmine, someone taller, broader. The driver headed toward Signal View condominiums, where the SUV would later be found by Katrina and Travis. The hooded figure parked Jasmine's car and was picked up minutes later by a dark Prius, likely a rideshare service. The Prius returned to the area around Jason's apartment building at 8:30 p.m. on November 23rd. A ring camera from the apartment next to an exit door captured Jason Chen leaving the building multiple times that day. At 8:27 p.m., just 3 minutes before someone in a light hoodie drove Jasmine's car away from the complex, Jason was seen exiting through that same door, wearing what appeared to be a light-colored hoodie. But other trips Jason made that day revealed even more damning evidence. Security footage from Walmart showed him shopping alone that morning, November 23rd. The overhead cameras provided a clear view as he purchased bandages, hydrogen peroxide, and heavy-duty cleaning products. He was wearing white sneakers, the same shoes that would later be found concealed outside the apartment building. He shoplifted too, running expensive items through the self-checkout as asparagus to avoid paying full price. A criminal trying to save a few dollars while covering up the crime of his life. That evening he stopped at Walgreens. More paper towels, more cleaning supplies. An apartment that must have been covered in evidence required constant attention. At almost 6 o'clock p.m. on November 23rd, security cameras captured a figure in that distinctive light-colored hoodie, struggling with a large suitcase. The person dragged it from the apartment building's front door toward the parking lot with visible difficulty. The weight was clearly substantial. The figure had to stop multiple times, repositioning their grip, struggling with the dead weight. Moments later, Jason Chen's black Toyota Camry left the complex, the trunk riding noticeably lower than normal. Detectives traced Jasmine's phone data using cell tower information and GPS coordinates. Her device had traveled with Jason to Walmart that morning, even though security footage showed him shopping completely alone. The phone's GPS revealed where he drove after loading that heavy suitcase into his car. Suck Creek Road, a winding route that ran parallel to a riverbank. Isolated, dark even during daylight hours. The kind of place where you could pull over and nobody would see what you were doing. On December the 1st, 9 days after Jasmine disappeared, investigators walked along that riverbank, searching for what they knew they'd find but prayed they wouldn't. Then they spotted it. A suitcase partially submerged near the water's edge. Inside, wrapped in multiple layers of plastic, they found 98 pounds of what had been a vibrant young woman named Jasmine Pace. She had been bound, hands behind her back with restraints that weren't police issue, flimsy chains that could be bought online. One of the restraints had a broken chain, like she'd struggled against them hard enough to snap the metal. Her body position told investigators everything about her final moments. She'd been curled into a fetal position, trying to protect herself, trying to make herself small. The autopsy revealed catastrophic injuries, multiple fatal wounds concentrated on the upper left side of her body. Dr. Stephen Cogwell, the Hamilton County medical examiner, concluded that based on the wound locations and patterns, Jasmine had been in that fetal position during the attack itself. She'd tried to defend herself with her left hand, which showed defensive injuries, but her right hand showed almost nothing, because her right hand couldn't move. It was bound in those restraints. The binding hadn't been applied after death to make the body fit in the suitcase. The restraints had been used to incapacitate Jasmine while she was still alive. to prevent her from fighting back or escaping, while Jason Chen subjected her to a frenzied attack that left her with injuries Dr. Cogwell described as especially heinous and cruel. There was no alcohol in Jasmine's system, no drugs. She'd been completely sober when she died. Jason Chen was arrested on November 29th at his parents' home in Nolensville, Tennessee. Officers noticed fresh lacerations on his right hand and feet, injuries consistent with a violent struggle involving broken glass. A search of his room revealed a black backpack containing handwritten notes. Jason had been preparing his story, rehearsing what he'd tell police if they came asking questions. The notes claimed he'd last seen Jasmine on November 19th, 3 days before she actually disappeared. They'd spoken on the 22nd, he wrote, but only briefly. He wrote that Jasmine had a history of running away, that an ex-boyfriend had a restraining order against her, that she'd been homeless at times. He even suggested her mother might be an alcoholic. All of it designed to paint Jasmine as an unpredictable runaway that nobody should worry too much about. A troubled young woman who disappeared sometimes. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. Inside a glasses case in his backpack, detectives found Jasmine's SIM card. He'd removed it from her phone, trying to control any communication that might reveal what he'd done. His own phone data told the real story. A photo of Jasmine in his bathroom, taken the night she disappeared. Screenshots of text messages he'd received from her, though the actual messages themselves had been deleted from his device, and messages he'd sent from his phone to hers after she was already dead. On the morning of November 23rd, hours after Jasmine died, Jason sent her a photo with the message, "Slept like a baby." The photo's metadata revealed it had been taken 2 years earlier. He was creating a digital trail, making it look like they were both fine, both going about their normal lives. Later that day, he texted her again. "Hey, are we still good for dinner tonight?" Pretending she was alive, pretending everything was normal, creating evidence that he expected to see her, that he had no idea anything was wrong. When Jason Chen's trial began in January 2025, his defense attorney shocked the courtroom on day one. He didn't fight for his client's innocence. Jason Chen took Jasmine Pace's life, attorney Josh Weiss told the jury in his opening statement, but he didn't do it with premeditation. The strategy was immediately clear. Jason faced life in prison without the possibility of parole if convicted of first-degree premeditated murder. His only hope was convincing the jury this was voluntary manslaughter, a crime of passion committed in the heat of the moment, a tragic accident that spiraled out of control. The defense presented a scenario that seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. Jason and Jasmine had been drinking wine late into the night. When Jasmine went to get another bottle from the kitchen, she heard Tinder notifications on Jason's phone. Multiple notifications. She became angry, confronted him, attacked him with a broken wine glass when he wouldn't explain who he was messaging. Jason, according to this version, grabbed a kitchen knife from the bedside table where he'd supposedly left it after opening a wine bottle earlier. He defended himself. The multiple fatal injuries were all defensive wounds. He was protecting himself from an enraged woman wielding broken glass as a weapon. Afterward, Jason panicked. He didn't know what to do with the body, so he applied the restraints to make Jasmine's body fit inside the plastic layers and the suitcase. The binding wasn't to incapacitate her during the attack. It was just for disposal convenience. Prosecutor Cody Wamp methodically destroyed this narrative piece by piece. Dr. Cogwell testified about the wound patterns. Jasmine had been in a fetal position during the attack, concentrated injuries on one side of her body. She'd tried to defend herself with her left hand, which showed she was conscious and fighting back. But her right hand showed no significant defensive injuries because her right hand couldn't move. It was already bound in that highly restrictive manner. The restraints weren't applied after death. They were used to incapacitate Jasmine while Jason subjected her to an attack so violent that the medical examiner had difficulty describing it in clinical terms. The toxicology report was damning. There was no alcohol in Jasmine's system. None. If they'd been drinking wine for hours as Jason claimed, there would be evidence of it. The drinking story was a complete fabrication. Those Tinder notifications that supposedly provoked Jasmine's jealous rage, data pulled directly from the app showed Jason received exactly 0 Tinder notifications that entire day. Not one. Another lie designed to justify the unjustifiable. Courtney Brewer, the neighbor who lived in the apartment below Jason's, testified about being startled awake around 2 in the morning on November 23rd. A scream, a female voice, distressed and emphatic, but not quite angry. Not the sound of someone in a jealous rage, the sound of someone terrified. Then footsteps, multiple people running toward the front door, the sound of the door slamming, hard enough to shake the building. 7 minutes later, at 2:18 a.m., Jasmine managed to send her mother that dropped location pin. 7 minutes during which she knew she was in terrible danger. 7 minutes during which she tried to escape, tried to survive, tried to leave some evidence of where she was and what was happening to her. She'd run for the door. Neighbors heard it slam. Jason caught her before she could get out. Then he spent those 7 minutes restraining her, binding her into a position where she couldn't fight back effectively. A position that would allow him to inflict horrific violence while she could do nothing but curl into a fetal ball and try to protect her vital organs with the one hand that could still move. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditated cruelty. The jury heard 6 days of testimony. They saw the surveillance footage showing Jason's movements, the phone records proving he'd lied about his contact with Jasmine, the crime scene photos that defense attorneys tried to suppress but couldn't keep out entirely. They heard about Jason casually playing Call of Duty with friends online hours after the murder, telling them he just needed to finish cleaning his apartment first. They learned about him messaging a woman on Tinder hours after Jasmine died, saying, "I guess we're dating now," moving on before Jasmine's body was even cold. Defense attorneys tried to raise doubt about crime scene contamination. Yes, Katrina Pace had entered the apartment multiple times before it was officially processed. Yes, she'd moved things, taken electronics, searched desperately for her daughter while police did nothing. Could she have contaminated evidence? Could she have even planted something? The jury saw through it immediately. As one juror later explained, every single person who went into that apartment had a part in contamination. But it didn't matter in our deliberations because we already knew what was admitted, that he had taken her life. The only question was whether it was premeditated. The physical evidence answered that question definitively. Jury deliberation began at 4:15 p.m. They returned with a verdict just after 5, guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. During the sentencing phase, Jason's mother made an emotional plea through a translator. She stood in the courtroom, tears streaming down her face, and spoke about her son. "He is a very good child," she said. "He is not a bad person. I pray that the judge and jury will give him a chance so he can go home and restart his life." Defense attorney Weiss asked the jury to offer Jason hope of redemption, to let him seek parole when he reached 73 years old. "You're not tasked with forgiving Jason Chen, or even excusing his actions," he argued. "You are tasked with ensuring justice, a justice tempered with mercy." The jury deliberated for less than an hour on sentencing. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. The crime was especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. It involved prolonged suffering and extreme physical abuse beyond what was necessary to cause death. Jason Chen would die in prison. Looking back at this investigation, one fact stands out above all others. If Katrina and Travis Pace had trusted the police to do their job, this case might never have been solved. The initial police response was worse than inadequate. It was negligent. Officers were called to Signal View condominiums where Jasmine's car sat abandoned. They took a report and left. When Katrina called the number from Jasmine's phone records and Jason Chen lied directly to police about his last contact with her, they did nothing. Even after discovering Jasmine's belongings inside Jason's apartment, even after neighbors reported hearing a violent disturbance at exactly the time Jasmine sent that location pin, police initially refused to obtain a search warrant. It took Katrina entering that apartment herself multiple times, gathering evidence, and creating a situation that finally forced law enforcement to act. She did the investigating. She tracked the GPS. She pulled phone records. She connected Jason Chen to the crime scene and refused to let police ignore what was happening. The Chattanooga Police Department eventually did solid forensic work once they finally got involved. But that involvement came far too late, prompted only by a mother who wouldn't accept bureaucratic excuses. This case exposed a fundamental flaw in how law enforcement handles missing person reports. The policy that adults have the right to disappear sounds reasonable in theory, but in practice, it becomes an excuse for inaction when clear evidence exists that something is wrong. Jasmine Pace wanted to be a mother someday. Her sister Gabby said she constantly talked about what kind of parent she'd be, how she'd raise her children, the life she'd build for them. She practiced with her 2 nieces and her godson Quan, showering them with the fierce protective love that defined her personality. She collected rescue cats. She showed up for friends in crisis. She never burned bridges. Everyone who knew her described the same qualities: clever, smart, brilliant, loving, loyal. "I've known her my entire life, and I've never seen her burn a bridge or end things badly with someone," one friend said. "She just always made it a point for you to know that she was thinking of you and that she loved you." Jasmine Pace was 22 years old, community college student, devoted aunt, animal lover, friend to anyone who needed one. She deserved a future filled with children and cats and people who loved her back as fiercely as she loved them. Instead, she spent her final minutes restrained and terrified, betrayed by someone she trusted, abandoned by a police force that should have protected her. Her parents gave her justice. They refused to accept official indifference. They investigated when investigators wouldn't. They pushed when the system tried to push them away. They loved their daughter enough to fight for her even after they knew she was gone. That's the legacy of Jasmine Pace. Not just a victim, not just a tragedy, but a daughter whose family loved her enough to move mountains when the people who were supposed to help couldn't be bothered to lift a finger. Jason Chen will spend every remaining day of his life behind bars, exactly where he belongs. The end.